He didn't hesitate when I gave him a choice. Watch what happened. My name's Rowan. I've never really spoken this story out loud, not all the way through. And even now, writing it down like this, my fingers pause over the keyboard more than they type. For most of my adult life, I believed that marriage wasn't just about love. It was about choosing the same person, day after day, no matter how hard things got. Even when everything went quiet. Especially when it did. Tessa and I met back in college, two people who couldn't have been more opposite if we tried. She was all about the city life. I felt most at peace in the woods. She lit up in a crowd. I got overwhelmed just walking through a busy grocery store. But somehow, despite all those differences, we just clicked. At least, it used to feel that way. We've been married for 14 years now. That's a whole lot of Tuesdays. A mountain of late-night store runs. More apologies than I can count. And somewhere in all that routine, I stopped noticing when things started to change. Or maybe I did notice, and just couldn't bring myself to accept it. There'd be times I'd see her across the room, half smiling at something on her phone. And I'd catch myself wondering, was that the same smile she used to give me? Back when we'd stay up all night talking until the morning sun slipped through the blinds. But instead of asking, I'd look away. I'd start making dinner. I'd fold the laundry. I'd keep holding on. Before I continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new and interesting stories. Put likes. But back to the story. The first time I truly felt her pulling away, it didn't come during a big argument or after some huge blow-up. It came quietly. Subtle, like a breeze through a crack in the window. I noticed she started saying I instead of we more often. She'd come home from work dinners with this glow about her, brighter than when she left. She stopped checking in about my day, but still expected me to ask about hers like nothing had changed. At the time, I brushed it off. Thought it was just the natural wear and tear of being together so long. But now, looking back, I can see those were warning signs. Quiet little alarms going off, barely loud enough to notice. Whispers of something bigger. Last fall, we went to this anniversary party in a friend's backyard. Everyone stood around drinking cider, talking about aging parents and rising mortgage rates. Tessa was off near the fire pit, laughing too loud at a story I'd never heard before, told by a guy I didn't recognize. His name was Jude. The way she looked at him, it wasn't like she was in love. And it didn't seem like she wanted him, exactly. It was more like she saw in him a glimpse of the life she wished she had. A version of herself that had taken a different road. That was the moment something tightened in my chest. A knot that started to form right then, and hasn't really let go since. I didn't bring it up that night. I smiled when she glanced my way. I drove us home while she scrolled through pictures on her phone, humming along to some old song that probably meant something to her once. When we got back, I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor, hoping she might ask me what was wrong. She didn't. She just slipped into one of her big, worn-out sleep shirts and turned off the light. After that, silence became our rhythm. We didn't argue. There weren't any slam doors or cruel jabs. Just this slow, quiet drifting, me talking into the air, her listening like it was background noise. One morning, I watched her sipping coffee while checking her planner, and it hit me. I had no idea what she was planning. No clue where she was going or who she was seeing. And worse, she didn't seem to care that I didn't know. The day everything finally cracked open started just like any other. She was getting ready for some dinner party I wasn't invited to. Her dress was new. Lipstick darker than usual. I asked, gently, if we could talk for a minute before she left. She gave me that look, that tired, distant look that said I was interrupting something more important. Like her mind had already walked out the door. But she sat down across from me, arms crossed. I started talking. Not blaming, not accusing, just trying to reach her. I told her I missed us. That I couldn't keep pretending like things were fine when they weren't. I just wanted her to hear me. That's when she stood up, grabbed her clutch, and said what she had to say. I never thought I'd hear those words come out of her mouth. Not after 14 years together. She looked me dead in the eye and said, "You can either listen to what I need, or you can leave. But I won't keep living in your quiet, Rowan." And she didn't say it in private. She said it with our friends standing right there, friends who had just walked through the front door to carpool with us to the party. The room froze. Even she looked a little stunned, like the volume of her own voice had caught her off guard. But I didn't say a damn thing. I just picked up my keys, gave her a look she'd never seen from me before, and walked out the door. I wasn't angry. I wasn't shattered. I was just done. But here's the thing. Walking out wasn't the hardest part. What came after, that was the real weight. I didn't drive far that night. There was no need. I ended up 3 blocks away in a near-empty grocery store parking lot, pulled into a spot beneath one of those old street lamps that buzzed and flickered like it was on its last leg. And I just sat there. Funny how the light made the windshield look cracked, even though it wasn't. But that's what happens when something inside you breaks. Suddenly you start seeing flaws everywhere. Everything looks fractured. I wasn't yelling or pounding the wheel. I didn't cry or scream. I just sat in the driver's seat, staring out into the dark, like my body had arrived, but my mind was still catching up. That moment at the house kept looping in my head like a scene from a movie. The way she stood there, arms crossed, chin lifted slightly like she'd been rehearsing those words for weeks. That look in her eyes, like I was an unwelcome guest in a life that no longer had a room for me. What I didn't expect, sitting in that cold, empty parking lot, was the calm. Not a peaceful kind of calm, more like emptiness. Like I had finally set something heavy down after carrying it for far too long. And the truth is, some part of me had been walking away from her for years. I just didn't realize it. I'd been taking small steps in the opposite direction, one silent evening at a time. The quiet between us wasn't anything new, it had just gotten loud enough for the rest of the world to notice. That night, I drove to my brother Miles's place. He's the kind of man who won't ask you what's wrong unless you want to talk about it. He opened the door, took one look at my face, and said, "Guest room's yours. Towels are under the sink." That simple gesture, that no questions asked kindness, was exactly what I didn't know I needed. I stayed there for 3 nights. I didn't call her. She didn't reach out either. I lay there staring at the ceiling in the dark, realizing I hadn't really slept in that house in a long time. I'd just been lying next to someone who hadn't truly been beside me in years. On the 4th morning, I went back to the house. It looked smaller somehow. Still as ever. I walked through each room slowly, like I was seeing it all for the first time. The framed photos on the mantel felt staged now. Smiling faces from a version of us that no longer existed. Just snapshots of people pretending everything was fine. There was a note on the kitchen counter, written in her handwriting. It wasn't folded, didn't have my name on it. Just a few flat words. "We both need space. Don't make this harder than it has to be. No love, Tessa. No apology. Not even a period at the end." I didn't pack a bag. I didn't leave a note behind. I didn't try to argue or plead. I just grabbed my laptop, a few shirts, and the old stack of letters she used to write me during our first year of marriage. She probably doesn't even remember they exist. But I kept them. Always did. They were tucked away in the drawer under the vintage record player, the one we bought from that little antique shop in San Luis Obispo on our 3rd anniversary trip. Back when her laughter still sounded real. Back when she reached for my hand just because she wanted to. That night, I checked into a small town near the coast. Nothing fancy. Just the kind of place with thick quilts, creaky floors, and sea salt in the curtains. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I let myself sit with the silence and finally listen to what it had been trying to tell me all along. It wasn't that I felt ignored. It was that for once, I actually wanted to sit with my own thoughts and hear what they had to say. And that night, something clicked, something I couldn't unsee. She hadn't walked out on me. The truth was, she'd checked out long before I noticed. Some mornings don't arrive with a clear beginning. They don't announce themselves, they just spill into the room in a wash of color. That day, it was a pale, cold blue creeping across the carpet, soft and distant. The kind of light that doesn't warm a thing. Somewhere on the other side of the wall, I could hear the ocean murmuring. Not calling to me, just whispering like it had secrets it didn't feel like sharing. I used to think time moved in order, like it followed a straight track. First, the promise. Then, the slow unravel. Then, the end. But I don't believe that anymore. Endings don't line up neatly at the finish. They begin in silence, in small, overlooked moments, long before you're ready to name them. Tess, as I used to call her, had this habit of humming when she made coffee. Never a whole song, just a small loop of some half-remembered tune. Over and over. I didn't even notice when she stopped doing it. But now, in the quiet, I feel the hole it left behind. It's like missing a step going down the stairs. Your body feels the absence before your mind catches up. There's something strangely sobering about sleeping in a bed that isn't yours and realizing it doesn't matter. I didn't miss our mattress with the dip from her shoulder. I didn't miss the lingering scent of her perfume on the sheets. I didn't even miss her voice. And that scared the hell out of me. That morning, I wandered down to the rocky shoreline out back. Seaweed tangled across the stones like ribbons someone forgot to pick up. A seagull limped across the sand, dragging 1 foot behind. I sat there for 2 hours, maybe more, watching the tide creep in and slip back out again, like even the ocean wasn't sure what it wanted. It reminded me of her. The way she used to reach for my arm when others were watching. The way she smiled at me across the dinner table, but always glanced at her phone halfway through. She had this way of performing love, but never fully stepping into it. I told myself it was a phase. That we were tired. That life had just gotten busy. That she'd come back to us. But the truth is, I'd been clutching something that had already faded out of shape. Holding on to vapor. Hugging fog. Hoping that if I held still enough, breathed slow enough, it might come back. And in that quiet moment by the sea, I finally let go of a question I'd carried far too long. What did I do wrong? And the answer, when it came, didn't hurt. It was simple. Nothing. I showed up. I stayed gentle. I asked. I listened. I gave effort. I chose her, again and again, even after she stopped choosing me. That evening, a newlywed couple checked into the room next to mine. I could hear their laughter through the thin walls. She called him some sweet little nickname. I can't even remember it now, something playful. And hearing that, it made my chest tighten, but not with jealousy. With clarity. I realized I don't want that kind of love again. The kind where you're constantly performing. Where you have to keep being interesting or charming or new just to be enough. Where being still feels like fading. I don't need declarations or grand plans right now. I'm not pretending to have it all figured out. But I'm slowly learning how to sit with the truth, without racing to patch it up. And the truth is this. I was in love with someone who loved being admired more than being understood. That night, I wrote a letter. Not to send, just to write. To put it all on paper. To prove it was real. That it meant something. That I meant something. The house didn't start changing the night I left. Those rooms had been rearranging themselves for a long time. That's what I keep coming back to. It wasn't her packing a suitcase, or the door clicking shut behind me, that marked the end. It was earlier. It was in the way she stopped looking up when I walked in. The way her eyes drifted right through me, like she was trying to understand a language she'd forgotten. And now I see it all clearer than I ever wanted to. The morning she painted the bedroom a new color without saying a word. The night she cooked dinner but didn't wait for me to sit down. That party where I heard her introduce me to someone I didn't know, not as her husband, but just as Rowan. I should have noticed. Should have spoken up. But what do you say when love doesn't storm out the door? When it doesn't slam or shatter? It just slips away. Quietly. Like steam. Like breath fading in cold air. And then there was the silence, not empty, and definitely not peaceful. It lingered between us like we were both trying not to jostle something delicate, even though whatever it was had already cracked and collapsed days ago. We just hadn't admitted it out loud yet. I kept thinking about this one afternoon, back in year 3 of our marriage. We were at this tiny roadside diner somewhere outside Yakima. She ordered waffles, loaded with blueberries and cream. Teased me for drinking my coffee black, called me an old man with serious eyebrows. She touched my knee under the table, just a quick, familiar thing. We laughed about something dumb, probably a sign on the wall or the music they had playing. And when we left, we were still holding hands. So what do you do with a memory like that, when the person across from you now quietly orders a salad, doesn't look up from her screen, and scrolls like there's something holy in those glowing pixels that might save her from having to talk to you? I've stopped asking where I went wrong. That question ran its course. Now I ask myself why I stayed quiet for so long. And that one stings deeper. Not because I regret loving her, but because I kept handing her parts of myself, small and honest and real, and she stopped reaching out to take them. Toward the end, I started going on early morning walks. Always before the sun was up. The cold made sure I didn't forget I was still alive. And like clockwork, a silver pickup would drive by. Same time, same fogged-up windows. I'd nod at the driver. He'd nod back. That 1-second exchange felt more genuine than the last dozen conversations I had with Tessa. She finally messaged me. 3 words. We should talk. But I haven't replied. Haven't even opened it. Because talking would mean shrinking again, making myself small enough to fit back into a version of us that no longer exists. It would mean being careful again, quiet, digestible. And I'm not going back to being someone's manageable version of enough. I used to believe the hardest thing in life was being left. It's not. The real weight, the one that sits on your chest at 3 a.m., is knowing you were never fully seen, and pretending for years that that was okay. The cafe was warm inside, but I kept my jacket on. I don't know why. Habit, maybe. Protection. I sat near the window, hand wrapped around a cup of tea I didn't even ask for. The barista had recommended something herbal, and I didn't have it in me to disagree. Outside, people moved with purpose, heads down, bundled up. Inside, the light drifted slowly across the table like it had nowhere better to be. 2 tables over, a man was on the phone, speaking in clipped, low tones. A girl near the corner had her head in her hands. Quiet sobs. I noticed, but didn't stare. Just took it in and stayed still. Felt like the only thing I was good at lately. I'd been at the inn nearly a month. Same room. Same routine. The staff stopped asking when I'd check out, and I stopped giving them answers. There was a strange comfort in the repetition. Same chipped blue mug every morning. Same creaky board outside my door. Same stretch of gray-blue ocean pretending it didn't change with each tide. I still hadn't read Tessa's message. I'd hovered over the preview bar more times than I liked admitting. A new one came in that morning. I've been thinking about everything. I miss who we used to be. Still didn't open it. The waitress brought me a second cup without asking. I nodded my thanks. My phone buzzed again. I turned it face down. Through the window, I watched an older couple cross the street. Arm in arm. Their coats didn't match, and the woman's shoes were clearly too thin for this kind of wind. But they walked together, slow, heads close, sharing something just between them. I wondered, not for the first time, what it would feel like to be chosen like that. Not because of history or guilt or routine. Just chosen. Fully. Softly. Without having to perform for it. Without someone checking their reflection every few steps to see if they still liked how it looked. My tea had gone cold. I paid the bill, left a tip that was probably too generous for what I got. But maybe kindness matters more when it's not required. The wind met me outside with the faint scent of salt and something else. Something old. Maybe driftwood, maybe memory. My boots crunched over gravel as I headed toward the cliffs. Same path. Same crooked bench that leaned a little too far to the left. I sat there most afternoons now. Never brought a book. Never wore headphones. Just sat. Let the world move around me while I stayed still. I still wore my wedding ring. Not out of belief. Not out of hope. I just didn't know what to do with the hollow space it would leave behind. The sky began to darken, slowly, like it wasn't in a hurry. The clouds rolled in slow and thick, like someone pulling a heavy curtain across the sky to dim the day. Rowan closed his eyes and just listened to the hush of the waves below, the soft inhale of the wind, and the quiet rhythm of his own breath. And for once, he didn't reach for anything. No memories, no meanings. He let everything arrive as it was, without trying to catch or shape it. Later, back in his room, the bathroom light made a faint buzzing noise. It was the kind of sound you'd never catch during the day, but at night, it filled the space. Rowan stood in front of the mirror, towel wrapped around his waist, not doing anything in particular. Not shaving. Not brushing his teeth. Just standing there. Still. The kind of stillness that makes silence feel thick and pressing. Steam curled lazily from the basin, rising like a memory. It reminded him of their first apartment, the one with the busted vent in the bathroom. After a shower, the mirror would fog over for an hour. Easy. Mornings back then, she used to draw little hearts in the condensation. One time, she wrote, "You still like me?" With a crooked little smiley face beside it. That memory dropped into his head without warning. He hadn't thought about it in years. He never answered her question that day. She'd laughed it off before he could say anything, called it a joke. But it stayed with him, like so many things do now. Small, strange, specific fragments of what used to be. A green dress she wore to his company's holiday party, the sleeves a little frayed. The way she'd tuck her hair behind both ears when she was nervous. A silver bracelet she wore every day until, one day, she didn't. A night she cried after a commercial, said it wasn't about the commercial. That was 6 years ago. He remembered the smell of rain through the open window, and how she gripped the fabric of his shirt in her fist when she finally drifted off. He never asked what she was really crying about. Back then, he told himself he was protecting her. But now, standing in the mirror's softened glow, he knew the truth. He'd been protecting himself. From knowing. From facing what he probably already felt shifting under the surface. The mirror had cleared a little. Enough for him to see his reflection. Older, leaner, worn in a way sleep couldn't fix. He didn't look heartbroken. Just unburdened. Like someone who'd finally stopped pretending to carry something that no longer had weight. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. Not a text, different tone. A voice message. He didn't reach for it right away. Just sat down on the edge of the bed, towel still damp against his back, and let it play from his palm. Rowan, I didn't think you'd really leave. You're not the one who walks away. I keep thinking you'll come back. Like always. Her voice cracked a little. Like she hadn't planned on recording it, but needed to let it out before the feeling passed. I don't know how to explain what happened. It wasn't someone else. It wasn't that. I couldn't find myself anymore. Not in us. Not in you. And maybe that's on me. Or maybe you stopped seeing me long before I disappeared. Then came silence. I miss laughing with you in the car. I miss how safe it felt, just being next to you. That was it. She didn't ask him to come home. Didn't apologize. Didn't even seem to know what she was asking for. And even now, after all of it, she still didn't understand how long she'd been gone before he ever reached for the door handle. Rowan set the phone down again. Not in anger. Not out of hesitation. Just calm. He knew whoever had recorded that message wasn't the same woman who kissed him on their 10th anniversary and whispered, "This still feels brand new." That version of her had faded long ago. And now, finally, he had to. He picked the table by the window the next morning. Not for the view. Just because the light wouldn't hit him directly in the eyes. He didn't check the time. Morning was running late. 5 minutes, then 8. At 10 past, she walked in. Same coat. Same hair. Different shoes. He noticed, but didn't say anything. She sat down without a word. Slipped off her gloves and laid them neatly beside her bag. Her fingers hovered over the silverware like she didn't know whether she'd need it. Neither of them reached for a menu. "You look tired," she said. "I've been sleeping," he answered. She nodded slowly, eyes drifting past him to the window, then back. "I didn't expect you to say yes. You asked to talk," he said simply. "I'm listening." A pause opened up between them, just long enough for the waiter to approach, realize nothing was happening, and walk away again. Tessa's hands tightened slightly around her water glass. "I've been trying to figure out what to say," she murmured. "But it all sounds wrong. You can just say it." But she didn't. Not right away. Her eyes moved over his shirt, the neat row of buttons, the tired line of his jaw, anywhere but his eyes. Did you think I didn't notice it slipping? She asked quietly. Rowan met her eyes. I think you did notice. I just think you didn't want to say it out loud. She nodded, barely. I thought if I ignored it, it might come back. It doesn't, he said, not unkindly. She let out a slow breath. There wasn't someone else. I know, he said, cutting her off before she could explain. It probably felt like I didn't, but I never thought there was. Her lips parted like she had more to say, but nothing came. She closed them again. The disappointment on her face wasn't loud, but it settled there. Around them, dishes clinked from other tables. A baby cried somewhere in the back. Wind brushed against the windows. After a while, he leaned forward just slightly. I'm not angry at you. She looked up. I'm not here to drag the past out into the light and try to scrub it clean, he said. We're not enemies, Tessa, but I can't come back to something that isn't there anymore. We tried for a long time. You drifted. I went quiet. That's just the shape it took. Her voice came small and soft. Did you ever miss me? He didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out the ring. Simple, worn smooth with time, still warm from being held. He slid it across the table toward her. She stared at it. Didn't touch it. Keep it, he said. Or don't. I'm not attached to the symbol. Just the years. Tessa blinked rapidly and swallowed. Her voice cracked. Are we done? No, Rowan said. We're already over. This is just the part where we stop pretending. He stood. She didn't. He gave her a small nod, not dramatic, not full of closure. Just acknowledgement. Then he walked out. No glance back. No swelling music. Just the chill of spring air meeting his skin and the quiet that follows something long overdue. And this time, he wasn't afraid of it. The air was softer than it had been in weeks. Early spring. That kind of light that doesn't demand attention but still touches everything. Rowan stood barefoot on the sand. Not thinking. Not analyzing. Just being. He hadn't made a plan for the day. No grand exit. No playlist of sad songs. No calls to old friends for advice or validation. He'd simply gotten out of bed, brewed a cup of coffee, opened the window, and didn't feel the pressure of waiting for someone else to shape the day. Morning didn't call again. He hadn't expected her to. Some things don't end with doors slamming. Some people leave long before you realize the door was ever open. And not all endings need explanations. Just peace. By noon, he'd packed up what little he brought. He stopped by the front desk, where the clerk smiled and offered him a free stay next time. Rowan smiled back. Kindly. And declined. He drove north, windows cracked, letting the wind trace its fingers through the cabin. The radio played something soft. He didn't know the song, but he didn't skip it either. Somewhere along the cliffs, he pulled over and took a photo. Not to post. Not to send. Just to keep. A moment to say I was here, not for anyone else, just for himself. He spent a few nights in a town he'd never been to. A place where no one knew his name. Where no one noticed the absence of a ring on his hand. In a small bookstore tucked behind a flower shop, he bought a journal. Not to write about Tessa. Just to write. Random thoughts about clouds. The way people laugh in cafes. Quotes he wanted to remember, even if he didn't know why. And then, one quiet afternoon, standing in line for a sandwich, a woman in a rust-colored corduroy jacket turned to him and said, I like your shirt. Rowan looked down. It was plain. Faded blue. Familiar. He smiled. Thanks. It used to be my favorite. Still should be, she replied, and turned back to place her order. She left before he did. Didn't look back. But something about it stayed with him, the simplicity, the sincerity. And for the first time in what felt like years, Rowan felt something shift. Not sadness. Not longing. Just openness. He wasn't starting over. He didn't need to. He was simply beginning again. And this time, he didn't need anyone to hold the door. He had keys of his own.